Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at the Millionaire's Row expansion for Machi Koro from IDW Games. Now, my copy of Millionaire's Row actually comes in the deluxe edition of Machi Koro, which is the base game with the 2 expansions, but you can buy the Millionaire's Row expansion separately, and I'm going to have a separate video review going up for the Machi Koro deluxe edition because I have quite a few things to say about that, so you can look for that video separately, but now I just want to talk about the Millionaire's Row expansion. So this is the second expansion for the game, and much like with Harbor, it introduces the concept of having a randomized lot of cards to buy from for Machi Koro, although you could do that with the base game as well, it doesn't really matter. And also it introduces new cards into the mix. A lot of the cards that come in this set are a little bit more difficult to use appropriately. Some of them only give bonuses if you're willing to take a serious setback in exchange for that, and some of them are just meaner cards towards your opponents. There's also a new mechanism called Renovation, and that's my Facebook, where you can disable some of your buildings or potentially your opponent's buildings and force them to take some actions just to remove the renovation marker. Let me go ahead and give you a brief look at some of the new cards that come in the set. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, let me show you the new stuff that comes in the Millionaire's Row expansion of Machi Koro. First things first, you notice there are new tokens in this game, and I'm going to remind you that I am using the expansion that was contained in the deluxe edition of Machi Koro. Therefore, I believe these tokens look a little bit different than what you're going to find in the standalone Millionaire's Row expansion, but not too different. These aren't fancy or anything. Watch my deluxe review and I'll have more comments about that. In any event, here's a new... But, well, let me explain what those tokens mean. There are certain cards in the game and special abilities that are going to make a card get a renovation token. If a card has a renovation token, it's effectively can't do anything. It's useless until it gets activated for the first time. When it gets activated for the first time, by rolling the appropriate die number, then you get to remove the renovation token, and now it can be used again. The card still counts as the card with its appropriate color, which means that, let's say, for instance, a renovation token was on this cornfield, then it would still need to, it could be a 3 or 4 rolled on anyone's turn, but if it was one of the green establishments, the secondary establishments, then it would have to be on my turn. But okay, let's go through the cards now. First, you have a cornfield. This is one of the primary establishments. Costs you 2. Roll of a 3 or 4 on anyone's turn. If you have less than 2 constructed landmarks, which are the main cards in the game, then you get a coin from the bank on anyone's turn. The vineyard is a roll of 7 on anyone's turn. Costs you 3 to buy it. You get 3 coins from the bank on anyone's turn. As simple as that. You have the general store. These are the secondary establishments, so these are only on your turn. If you roll a 2, this one costs you 0, notice. If you have less than 2 constructed landmarks, you get 2 coins from the bank on your turn only. The demolition company is on your turn only. It's a 4, and it costs you 2. If possible, you must demolish one of your constructed landmarks by turning it back onto its unconstructed side. When you do, you get 8 coins from the bank on your turn only. The loan office, on a roll of 5 or 6 on your turn, notice that it costs 0. When you construct this building, you get 5 coins from the bank. When this building is activated, pay 2 coins to the bank on your turn only. Then you have the winery. It's a roll of 9 on your turn. You get 6 coins for each vineyard that you own on your turn only. Then close this building for renovation. Put one of the renovation tokens onto it. The moving company requires a 9 or 10, and you must give a non-major establishment purple building that you own to another player. When you do, you get 4 coins from the bank on your turn only. It's a good way to get rid of those useless cards that become useless when you have too many landmarks. The soda bottling plant, which is 11 you have to roll, you get 1 coin from the bank for every restaurant owned by all players on your turn only. Speaking of restaurants, you have the new French restaurant. Remember, these are the kind of cards where if other players roll the appropriate number, you get to take money from them. So in this case, if the player who rolled this number has 2 or more constructed landmarks, you get 3 coins from the player who rolled the dice. And the members only club, which is on a 12 to 14. Now remember that for the 12 to 14, you're going to need the landmark from the Harbor expansion, which allows you to add 2 to your dice roll. which is in fact called the Harbor landmark. But the members only club says that if the players who rolled the number has 3 or more constructed landmarks, you get all of their coins, which is really powerful. So now the purple major establishments, you have the renovation company. You choose a non-purple building. All buildings owned by any player of that type are closed for renovations. Get 1 coin from each player for each of their buildings closed for renovations on your turn only. Then you have to flood them with those renovation tokens. Tech startup, at the end of each of your turns, you may place 1 coin on this card. The total placed here is your investment. When activated, you get an amount equal to your investment from all players on your turn only. And finally, the park. You redistribute all, when the 11 to 13 is rolled, remember you have to have the Harbor to roll to a 13, redistribute all players' coins evenly among all players on your turn only. If there is an uneven amount of coins, take coins from the bank to make up the difference. And that is the Millionaire's Row expansion of Machi Koro. Obviously there's more copies of each of these cards. I just wanted to show you one of them to show you what you were getting into. Let's get to my final thoughts. Of the 2 expansions, Harbor is the better one here. They both do the same essential thing, which is adding more cards into the mix, adding more life to the game. But Millionaire's Row stumbles in a couple of different areas. First off, there's no new landmark cards, which really there should have been. I mean, there just absolutely should have been. In fact, one of the landmark cards that you kind of need for a couple of the cards in this set to make them more useful, the Harbor, is in the Harbor expansion. So you kind of need both expansions to get the most use out of this one because, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's no other way to get your dice roll up to 13 or 14 without the Harbor from the first set. And there's a couple of cards in the set that have a range of like 11 to 13 or 12 to 14. So that's a bit weird. And I don't know why you wouldn't just make up some new landmarks to put in this in the first place. Unless they were just IDW was purposefully limiting themselves to whatever was released in the Japanese edition. I don't know. Or I don't know why the original edition didn't have more landmark cards if that was the case. But some of the new buildings are pretty interesting. A lot of them are kind of mean. There's restaurants that take all the money from whoever rolls the die, which might not be a great chance of happening, but when it happens, that's just like devastating. There's a couple of interesting buildings that are free, but they only have limited use. Like when you build a certain amount of landmarks, they become useless. Or when like the loan company or the loan office, which gives you a lot of money, but then you're paying for it, not nearly as good. I usually wouldn't recommend taking that unless you're taking the moving company, which is much more interesting because that lets you give someone else your buildings in exchange for money. So when you get those deadweight buildings or ones that are actually hurting you, then just get rid of them. Excuse me. There's actually a purple card that I like for once. I don't like most of the purple cards, but I think that the tech startup is super cool with making this investment. Now, normally the game does not go on long enough for that to matter a ton, but it could, and I just like the idea of it and socking away money, especially when you've got like, you just spent a ton of money mid-game to buy a landmark, and now you're stuck with 1 or 2. It's like, well, throw it on the tech startup. Let's see what happens for future rounds. Just save up for that. So I dig that quite a bit. So overall, there are a decent amount of fun cards here. They're just a little more difficult to use, not as immediately useful as some of the cards I found in Harbor, so that's definitely the better one to go with. But like I said, you most definitely need an expansion to make Machi Koro better. And if you really love the game, go for both of them because it never hurts to have more variety, especially if, as apparently is the case when I look at my Twitter feed, people play this game constantly, so much more than even I do, and you need that kind of variety. So Millionaire's Row, pretty decent. Go with Harbor first, but you really can't go wrong with this one either. Enjoy. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.